we're going to tie a fly called the white bugger. I'm using an SC15 size 2 hook, and I'm using some Danville flat wax nylon thread and some 3/16 real eyes plus. I'm just going to lock the eyes in by doing some figure 8 turns, and importantly to do a few of these turns parallel to the eyes itself to grab the thread wraps you've made and tighten those down, and that really helps to lock that in nicely. We'll wrap back to the bend, and I'm going to use a little Arctic Fox for the tail. I'm going to keep all the nice guard hairs and pull out the little finer hairs and just discard those. We're going to go for, maybe a 1 3/4 inch length tail here. And just going to tie that in on top of the hook and wrap back to the bend. And we'll just grab all this extra material and just trim that off. Now, I'm going to use a little flash. You could use what you want. This is just some crystal flash, but you could use Flashabou or Polar Flash. I'm going to tie in around 6 or so fibers close to me, wrap it back, and wrap back up, and grab the remaining fibers and just tie those down so you have some fibers on each side of your Arctic Fox. And here's the tail, basically. And we're going to trim the crystal flash a little bit longer than the Arctic Fox. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie in some monofilament in a U parallel to your tying bench here. And I'll show you what we're going to do with this at the very end. This is just some 25-pound mono. And we're just going to make a little U out of it like so. And tie that in parallel to the bench. There you go. And we'll just trim off this little bit of excess here. Next, we're going to take some chenille. This is just some Estaz and pearl. And we're going to tie that in and wrap back to the bend. And then we're going to wrap it around. Usually around 4 turns works out pretty good. And we're going to lock that in just in front of the eyes with a couple wraps here. And then what I'm going to do is just figure 8 that around the eyes like so to get that around the eyes, and we'll lock that back in. And I'm tying this in white, but you could tie it in orange and chartreuse and pink. I've had success with all of those. Quite a simple fly. And we'll trim that off, and then a couple more wraps here, and then I'm going to do a whip finish here. I just like to put the head cement right onto the tying thread, and that works out nicely. And we'll just do a little whip finish here. Now, we're going to go back to the little mono loop that we made, and here you could see it right here. I'm just going to take a little UV knot sense now, and we're going to apply that to both sides of the tail, the side closer to me, and sort of work it in a little bit with the nozzle and your UV knot sense, and get the other side there too. So we've gotten both sides, and I like to put a little bit right on top of that mono loop like so, and take a little toothpick here and just wipe off that little bit of excess there before we hit it with the UV light. Now, when you hit it with your UV light, just make sure that the tail is connected to that mono loop. You want it all to sort of lock in there, just like so. And there you go. Now, you can see the purpose of that is now when you're casting, it's going to be a lot more difficult for it to wrap around the hook, and it almost never does. Whereas I think without this UV, at least for me, when I'm casting, a lot of times it'll wrap around that hook, and you're not going to catch too many fish then. So there you go. There's the fly. little saltwater bugger there.